Attention listeners, ahead are spoilers.
Hello, and welcome to the Movie Trap. My name is Russell Carlson, and with me as always, Chris Boroff.
You guys run this place like a prison.
And with me as always, Zach Powers.
I hope the sea is as blue as it has been in my dreams.
Welcome. On the Movie Trap, each one of your hosts or inmates pick a movie based on a theme that one of the hosts picks, and then after we've watched all three movies, we then vote on using an allocated amount of points about which one of their favorite or we like them more or whatever. After we're done voting and we've watched all three movies, whoever's host movie wins the theme gets to pick the next theme, because we are back at it, boys. We have had our fun in the sun enough. It is time to get back to the grindstone and get started on a brand new theme this week, which was for Zach Powers, and he has chosen movies that are an adaptation of something that you have read. And he has chosen, knocked it out of the park really, with 1994's The Shawshank Redemption. So, that's what we are here to do today. As I said, we have an allocated amount of points, so just as a reminder, everybody, each host has 10 points for final voting, plus 3 bonus points that we could divvy out to each other for whatever reason we want.
We haven't done this part in so long, I almost forgot about it.
Yeah, right, yeah, so don't forget your bonus points. I mean, we rarely do it in the first episode, but, you never know. But don't forget you had them. They're locked and loaded. That's where we all are. 10 points for final voting, 3 bonus points all the way around. Welcome back to the Movie Trap. It is great to be back. And with that in mind, Zach Powers, jump on us with The Shawshank.
The Shawshank Redemption is a 1994 drama film written and directed by Frank Darabont. It's based on a 1982 novella by Stephen King called Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. It is the story of a banker, an upcoming banker in Maine, of course, named Andy Dufresne. He is convicted of killing his wife after a lot of semi-circumstantial evidence comes to light at his trial. His wife and her lover that she was cheating on him with. And he is sent to Shawshank State Prison for a multiple life sentence for his multiple murders. He initially, as you might feel a person would, has trouble settling in at Shawshank, which is from the get-go clearly a pretty corrupt institution. The night Andy arrives, the man is beaten to death. But eventually he starts to come out of his shell and befriends another inmate, the narrator of the tale, Ellis Redding, played by Morgan Freeman. I didn't mention this movie stars Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman and Bob Gunton and Clancy Brown.
Clancy Brown, that's right.
Clancy Brown. William
Gil
Sadler.
Bellows.
Gil Bellows, that I think we chatted about last time.
We did. Trick or Treat. He was the cop in Trick or Treat.
Yep. And James Whitmore as a character actor. Well, as Mark Rolston from, I think, Aliens?
All those people. Regardless, he comes out to be starts talking to Red, who is a contraband smuggler in the prison, who gets him a rock hammer and a poster of Rita Hayworth. Andy is initially assigned to kind of crap jobs like the prison laundry, and attacked by a prison gang called the Sisters, led by a fella named Boggs. That's how his first few years in the prison are spent. But one fortuitous day, there is a job to tar the roof of a nearby building, and Andy and some of the other Red and some of the other kind of likable characters in the prison get selected for the duty. The guard who killed the man on the first night, Byron Hadley, starts complaining about his inheritance tax on a dead brother. And Andy offers him a bit of advice about how to avoid that tax, which results in everybody on the roof getting a few beers. But it also results in the prison guards noticing that Andy has some potentially useful knowledge. So the next time the sisters attack Andy, Hadley beats Boggs to the point that he is unable to walk for the rest of his life and is transferred to another prison. And Andy is not attacked by fellow prisoners again after that point. Eventually, the warden meets with Andy, a religious man named Samuel Norton, and they send him to the prison library with Brooks, an old inmate, which turns out to be a front to do taxes and things for the various prison staff. At the same time, Andy begins to try and repair the prison library, which is in bad shape, writing letters constantly to the state board for more money for the library, new books, that sort of thing. Eventually, Brooks is paroled. He had been in the prison for 50 years and finds that the world outside is impossible to adjust to, and restarting at such an old age is an impossibility. And he hangs himself. Meanwhile, back at the prison, eventually the library does improve, and Andy starts to display a bit of a stubborn streak. He plays the Marriage of Figaro to the yard over the PA system, after which he receives a little bit of solitary confinement. And eventually, as time goes by, Red and Andy become closer, and Andy becomes closer with the other folks in the prison. And the Norton starts using prison labor to undercut other labor groups, and receiving bribes from those groups in order to sort of curtail their losses. Andy is laundering all that money under an alias named Randall Stevens. Eventually, a young fella comes to Shawshank, a guy named Tommy Williams, who's sort of a career burglar who's not particularly good at it. And Andy decides that he's going to help him get his GED. And they study for a while, and it turns out Tommy starts to do decently at his studies. But during the course of their relationship, Red reveals the details of Andy's incarceration, and Tommy realizes he knows the actually guilty culprit in the situation, a guy he bunked with in a different prison for a little while. Andy approaches Norton and says he has to bring this information forward. It proves that he's wrongfully imprisoned. But Norton, knowing that Andy has a lot of information on his illegal money laundering and tax evasion and every other kind of financial scheme you could ever hope to have, sends him to solitary confinement for multiple months as a kind of warning to break his rebellious spirit, what have you. And in that intervening time, Tommy first gets his GED, but is shortly thereafter, after Norton confirms the information that Tommy put up, shot to death by Hadley and Norton under the guise of a prison escape. And eventually, Andy is brought back, seemingly a broken man by this terrible news, and various threats and his multiple months in solitude. And he tells Red that he has a simple dream of getting away from this prison and running away to Zawantanejo. And he also tells him about a hayfield near Buxton, Maine, where he was once happy with his wife, and tells Red if he's ever released to retrieve a package there. Red is concerned that Andy is considering suicide, especially after he asks another one of the inmates for rope. But the next day, Andy's cell is empty. Having no idea where he went, they throw a rock at the poster on Andy's wall. It's now Raquel Welch. It's changing with the times. And reveals that there is a deep tunnel burrowed through the wall of the prison over the course of the past nearly 20 years with the rock hammer. And that the previous night, Andy had run through the tunnel, gone through the sewage pipes, and managed to escape the prison. And the next morning, went into the bank under his alias, Randall Stevens, and stolen basically all of Norton's money, his illegally gained money, and mails the evidence after that to a local newspaper. State police arrive at the prison, and Hadley is arrested, and Norton commits suicide. A year later, Red is finally paroled after serving something like 40 years. And like Brooks before him, struggles to adapt to the life outside and worries that he is past the point of institutionalization, that he'll never be able to do it. But following Andy's advice, he visits Buxton and eventually does find under a bizarre rock a cache of money and a letter that asks him to come to Zawantanejo. Red elects to steal away from his parole and travels across the border to Mexico, finally feeling hopeful for the first time in decades. And the last shot is him meeting Andy on a beach, reunited once again.
And they hug.
Roll credits. Everybody applauds. I mean, it's kind of a struggle, right? Because it kind of reminds me of like when we did Rear Window. Like, what on earth can we talk about this movie that hasn't pretty much already been said?
Yeah. I mean, it bombed when it came out. Everybody knows
Right.
that. Then it caught steam because it was on. It was like one of those early adopters, I think, DVDs, and like it played on HBO all
rentals.
the time.
Yeah, it's sort of the It's a Wonderful Life approach to
it's the almost the
success.
exact same journey.
Yeah.
But you would struggle to find a list of American movies and not have this one be on there, like at least in the top 10. You would struggle.
Yeah, it's. I think that it's one of those ones where, I mean, not only Bomb Break came out and then it became sort of a big deal for the next 10, 15 years. And then I think it became very fashionable to dislike this movie for a time. And now I think maybe the worm is starting to turn in the other direction again.
I've always been curious about this one. Like, it's funny that you picked this one out because it is an adaptation. Like, Frank Darabont did this one, and then for some reason this one they decided to have him do it again, and then the next time he did it, it bombed again. But then people talked about it a lot afterwards because it was the fog or the mist.
The Green
Mile was
Green
the
Mile
next one
was,
after this, which is much closer, also a Stephen King prison story.
Yeah, it's the spiritual successor of Shawshank.
Am I completely wrong? Did he not do?
Well, he did do The Mist, but that was later.
I see, but he did do the Green Mile.
2007.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. Okay, yeah, I mean a spiritual sequel. Yeah, that is kind of on point. I think
For
who
sure.
said that? Was it Zach?
That was
Zach,
Russell.
that was Russell.
That was
I'm
Russell.
giving you a point.
Yay!
Spiritual sequel.
Yeah, and it's true too, and it's actually funny because if you read the show notes, apparently Tom Hanks was sought after to play Andy Dufresne, but he couldn't because he was doing Forrest Gump at the time. And then they just said, "Well, how about I'll do the next prison movie?" And he's like, "All right, great, sounds good."
But definitely, Green Mile and this are like, before there were those letterbox lists that are hyper specific. I always thought like. Stephen King adaptation prison movie about a wrongfully imprisoned man who restores hope to the convicts and deals with corrupt, the amount of like similarities you could write are astonishing.
Sure. I think part of what makes, Shawshank quite a bit better is, Green Mile has a kind of magic thing with...
Yes, John Coffey is a supernatural figure in that.
Yeah,
he
right. Which is more
theoretically
common for
like he's almost. I mean, the initials give it away, but he is a Christ figure.
I always thought that the supernatural part was that Tom Hanks was like peeing fire constantly. That one I actually read that in The Green Mile he had a urinary tract infection that he described as peeing fire onto some logs, and I didn't know what they were going to do in the movie. And then the scene comes up and it's just Tom Hanks pissing. And then I remembered this is kind of his thing in movies. It's Tom Hanks peeing because of,
Forrest
the other
Gump,
movie we watched.
Yeah, sure,
Forrest Gump or, No Crying in Baseball.
Sure.
Tom Hanks pees in a lot of his movies.
That's a guy, I've never thought about that, but you're right. Now that I've given it a good think, you're kind of right.
You see a lot about, if you look that up online, you'll see a lot of people making lists of that. One of the things we can briefly talk about is... I semi-recently, when I proposed this topic, was several months ago, and I had pretty recently read the novella this is based on. It is different. It is, in fact, one of the maybe top contenders ever for the adaptation being better than the source material.
Interesting.
In my opinion. It's not that it's bad. There are parts of this movie that take dialogue wholesale. A lot of Red's narration is actually directly scripted from the novella. But so much of it is told differently. The supporting cast is different. Like, there is a Brooks analog, but the entire thing with Brooks going to the outside and committing suicide, it's not in the movie. It's not in the novella. Not there at all. The entire thing with like the marriage of Figaro over the prison yard, that is a complete addition. The kid doesn't get murdered. He just gets transferred. There's multiple wardens. There's multiple guards that change over the years. It's not just one like pair of antagonists. And the ending is more ambiguous. Red does eventually get out, but like the way Andy communicates the information is so vague. Even the stealing of the money is like something he set up prior to his prison time that like accumulated in value. It wasn't him taking it from the warden, who does not get the same comeuppance. Like it's very it's like a very first draft version of the story. The escape is largely the same. But
is his experience with the sisters the same?
That is in the book. And I think he gets protection. I don't recall. I can't recall if there was a central sister who gets like, I think it's more like they were a vague group and there wasn't a central like main member of that gang. It's rather that once he starts doing these taxes and things for the guards, he just has protection and they leave him alone.
I read that he actually in the novella, Andy Dufresne snuck in like $500 in the prison wallet, and you can Google that term.
Oh yes.
And that's
true.
how he managed to get he paid off the guards to, that's
he did.
What I read.
He like got some, that's how he did some initial things. That's how he gets the rock hammer early on and stuff.
Really?
I mean, one of the off-screen things one of the things that they don't explain about this that leaves me thinking is that, if Morgan Freeman's character is the guy who gets you stuff in prison, he's held a lot of stuff in his butt. Like, every time you see him walking in the movie, he's probably got, like, a laundry list of somebody else's things he has to hand them, jammed in his rectum. That's just my opinion, because that is a common... I've learned a lot about prison since this movie. When I first watched it, didn't know that much. Now, I've seen a whole bunch of YouTube channels, so anyway.
Seen Locked Up Abroad.
It seems like, based on what we see in this movie, he has a slightly more sophisticated system where they smuggle it in through. Like, he has Brooks delivering it inside of those books. And,
right.
Yeah, it seems like a much more...
little bit more rated R. Unlike that what was that one movie we watched? Hunger, the Steve McQueen movie.
Oh,
where,
yeah.
like, he like jams stuff down his throat and stuff. It's fucking weird.
I think one of the main differences is so while the novella has a lot of the darker aspects of this, the intermittent, like really touching or hopeful or whatever aspects are lighter. It's a lot more of a straight story of a guy who went to prison and got away. And while Red was like a little hopeful at the end, it's mostly a very dark read without a lot of the uplift that this movie manages to provide.
Well, and even I read that apparently Darabont's vision for the movie was to leave it more ambiguous and not show them meeting at the end.
They don't show that. That is not included in the book. Them actually meeting up is like, Red is like, I'll go down to Zihuatanejo and we'll see what happens. But there is no indication that they reconnect.
And Darabont's original vision for the movie was to keep it at that, where he kind of drives off in the bus, fade to black. It was the studio that insisted on having them meet at the beach, apparently.
Interesting, because I do think the beach meeting is a better choice, actually. I think it's something like you kind of want at the end of the movie. And it's the opposite of what Darabont did with The Mist, where he he very famously changed the ending to that to be much darker than the original story.
That's interesting. And you know, I'm kind of I kind of understand Darabont still isn't crazy about that last scene. He sort of thinks it's a little sappy and a little too like obvious. And in a way I agree, but I do think because it's such a long movie to kind of end on a note like that, I think is a little more rewarding than have it be ambiguous. I mean, you could work it out what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You don't need to show it.
The last
but
shot,
in a way,
you can cut the last shot. It still works okay, but the last speech is good. You need that speech, but
yeah, that's fine. But I mean, the whole. I mean, if it had gone on longer, where they're like, "Well, how are you, Andy? Oh, I'm good, Red." You know, but it's just a real concise, and all they do is laugh and then cut, fade to black, roll credits.
I mean, I kind of agree with Zach that it kind of needs, in this case, I think it kind of needs to be in the movie. Because of the rest of the film has been set up as a whodunit, they kind of leave you with that expectation that you're going to see how he gets out, where he goes, stuff like that. Point. So if they didn't have that in there, it would be ambiguous. I think it would work better if the rest of the movie had been more of like a study of just character study with a lot of gray areas where you don't know what's going to happen with people. But in this one, they spell it out really, really clearly for you as you go through the movie. That's like they introduce the characters and then they pick up later on what's going on. You even see the goddamn bird grow up to a full-grown bird and get released. So it's one of these movies. Yeah, they don't leave it hanging because it wouldn't play in this context. I think that would be an issue. Like if you just didn't know what happened, people would lose their mind wondering if he went down to Zihuatanejo. And the rest of it, like you gotta see it.
Zihuatanejo. And also
Zihuatanejo.
Zihuatanejo.
Let's see how long it took. Good job.
Yeah. Okay.
It should be known every time we sign off, Borif always says via con Dios, so he's very proficient in Spanish. I think
I know someone who actually lives there, so that is an advantage.
Okay, that helps. Yeah, right. Because I always thought it was spelled Milwaukee.
Wait, you know someone who lives in the place they go to in the movie?
Yeah, the kid. So the neighbor that lived across the back fence from me growing up, one of his kids lives in Zihuatanejo.
Oh.
Wow. Is it nice?
I don't know. I've never been there.
Oh, okay. I figured you might know from the guy who had the kid down there.
It should be known that in the movie it's just the Virgin Islands. It's not Mexico.
And also when he drives across the border to get to Mexico, he's driving on the Pacific Coast Highway.
Yeah, that's fair. And also it's also, I mean, like most Stephen King stuff, it takes place in Maine in the original. This is actually shot in Ohio. The story takes place in Maine, but it was shot in Ohio. And I think it's really, really cool that they actually got an actual fucking prison to shoot in. And Like I have the special edition DVD of this. So
Man,
I
they don't make
watched all
prisons that look like that anymore.
No, it was apparently about to be torn down, but because this movie gained such a kind of cult following, some film society bought it up, and it's now like a tourist attraction in Mansfield, Ohio, or something. So it's still standing. And it's funny because when you on the special edition, like behind the scenes documentary, the BTS or whatever, they talk about being in that prison. Robbins and Brown and Morgan Freeman say like it was very helpful because you could kind of feel that this place is terrible. You know, like, and apparently the prison where they shot it had a very nasty reputation of being just corrupt and terrible, and it was shut down for those reasons. So it really was empty, and it was due to be shown. It was an incredible spring of luck to get that location, because it totally, I think, informed not just the claustrophobia of how they're directing it, but I think it also helped drive the performances, because I think part of the, you know, when you're dealing with prison movies, you have kind of similar themes, right? That like the walls that encapsulate you are only as big as you let them be. Even when you're out of those walls, there's still walls outside of there. I'm getting into the Patrick McGowan prisoner rant here, Boris, if you can't sense it. But even like Birdman of Alcatraz, which is a little different because that's a little bit more of a like kind of more sappy, and this one's more or less about like a friendship and how human companionship can transcend those walls. I think that's me. I mean, there's a lot of like Christ-like kind of interpretations of this film. I don't know, but I really think that you have these kind of similar themes in prison movies, and that's why they work. Cool Hand Luke's an excellent example too, because the walls, you realize, are not actual prison walls. It's the walls that society put around you all the time. Even when you're out of those walls, there's other walls.
Cool Hand Luke feels like a precursor to this in a bigger way, because there's kind of the two central characters, Luke and Dragline, and like Dragline kind of like grows. You know, they have that relationship. This one's it's more complicated. I don't know. When I was in an AP English class in high school, we had to do, we learned about the hero's journey one year. It was sophomore year, junior year, I don't know. And people are like, and they gave us assignment, like, you know, you could pick a film and map out the hero's journey in it, right? And I was like, I liked the shot of this movie a lot at the time. Actually, like when I was like 14, 15, this was like, I was with the consensus. I was like, oh, that's the best movie I've ever seen. And I picked this one, and I was like, oh, I don't know who the protagonist is in this movie.
It's pretty clear Andy's the protagonist and Red is the narrator.
Right, but Red is the one who has the more clear... The character arc of Red is far clearer than the character arc of Andy.
Yeah. I think that's probably fair.
That's a fascinating part of it, because he's... Normally when you have a protagonist, they're an active protagonist. Andy generally just reacts to things that are happening to him, and he doesn't become active until later in the movie when you realize that he's been conning people, and he does the flip. So it's one of those things, like he's just like a sleeper agent for the first chunk of the movie. You don't think he's going to be the main character. I mean, you kind of know he's going to be the main character because they keep pointing the camera at him. Well,
it's the first person you see in the movie.
Yeah.
So,
but he also doesn't change
it's
much.
His story. Character-wise, it's Red's story, and I still don't really know what to do with that when I'm writing that essay, because
it's true, because like it does kind of shift at you at the end once Andy escapes, and then Red's kind of like almost on this kind of puzzle piecing mission to kind of find him. So that's where the plot dynamic shifts a little bit at the end into Red, because he's the one kind of driving the plot. But ultimately, nothing happens in this movie without Andy Dufresne. I mean, that's why I would argue he's the protagonist. Nothing happens in this movie if it's not for Andy Dufresne. And because Morgan Freeman... this movie, I think the trick that it does is that the protagonist is not the connection that the audience makes. I think it's the way that Robbins plays it, and even the way that Darabont even directs it. Andy's always at arm's length, right? Like he's kind of, you're observing him like Red is. You know, you're more just kind of watching him, and you're not. And the way Robbins always said, I always tried to play Andy like he's having a secret, you know, and he does all the time, because he, like you say, he's conning everybody. And I think that was a brilliant sort of 1-2 punch to have that kind of the escape and then finding Andy at the end. And luckily, the end doesn't drag on like it should, a la, Return of the King or whatever. So I that's why I think that's the important distinction for me, at least, is that the human connection, the emotional connection between the two characters is obviously Red, not Andy. Andy's our guy that we're watching and rooting for, but he's not what pulls us in, and he's not what connects us to this world as much as Red does.
Right, but you can understand my dilemma, because
sure.
Part of the idea of the hero's journey is this change in character. And, like, even when we learned about it, like, they were always like, okay, you've got like things like death and rebirth when the character really changes. And that scene happens to fucking Andy, but his character isn't necessarily changed. He is the same guy after he like crawls out reborn from that tunnel and like has maybe the most famous death rebirth image in one of the most famous in movies. Yeah. But it's like, but he's not the one who makes the change. Like, the change happens to Red.
I would say that he kind of is, though, because eventually he's like, no, I'm going to commit a crime. And he commits to crime. And it's like he said, like, I had to come to jail to be a criminal. Or I had to, like, whatever he says. The famous line where he's like, something, I came to jail and learned to be a criminal.
I'm gonna give you a point for that, because I think that it brings into the theme of institutionalizing, right? That like you because you're around it a lot, you adapt and decide to do it. Because obviously he's been planning the escape since the beginning. So where his change, I think, occurs is actually like connecting with Red and the other inmates too. Like, where at first he's kind of timid and scared of everybody, and he eventually kind of comes out of his shell. And I think he comes out of his shell probably because he realizes he needs help to do this caper, even if they don't know about it. That's just my theory. But I'm going to give you a point, because I think that's true, that a lot of recidivism comes from, the fact, this is the only life I've known, so I'm going to keep doing it. And the only way to beat an unjust system is to not play by its rules. So right. I'm going to give you a point for that, Borif.
That's definitely, if that is the intended thing, like, if the idea is in his former life, Andy never stood up to the injustice in his life and just kind of took his licks, which if they should probably communicate slightly clearer, because he seems a little bit like even when the sisters first come at him, he's like resistant. He never lies down and takes it for the most part, unless he's doing it as part of his game. Then that does make sense, because like, he has his moments of like open rebelliousness, which probably don't work well with his grander plan. It seems like he respects institutions more than individuals. So like, if somebody individually is attacking him, he can, for some reason, it seems like he responds. But if it's like a whole institution, he usually just kind of goes into the victim mode of like, this is wrong or something like that. Like, I think the only time he really was ready to throw down with the thing that triggers him is when the kid dies, and then he's like willing to throw down with the warden, and that triggers all the things. But I was thinking, but even then, like before that, he does the stunt with the record. He's confrontational with the state board by sending them letters every single week.
Yeah, like, he's tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. He shows who he is, so you know that you can't trust him to be boring. Yeah, that actually, I'll agree with you. I think that's probably something that gets revealed, and then that's just a continuance of it. So maybe that's not a complete change. I think it's just the scale of what he's pulling off changes. The imagery of him going through the sewer and then coming back outside, I think that would probably work pretty well for the returning, like the end of the hero's journey, where it's returning from another world with the secret or whatever, because he's coming through and he knows he's going to take the money and then run off to Zawatanejo. So I'm not arguing with you as a child when you wrote it, but it was a thing where I was just like, it seems like it.
Good job.
You know what, Chris? I'm going to give you a point for learning how to pronounce whodunit.
One thing about this that I have always wondered, like everyone talks about it being a good movie, and I think that it definitely is good. I'm not going to be one of these weirdos that hates on this movie, because it kind of surprises me a little bit that people did that, because it is a solid movie-ass movie. That said, there is some weirdness with this. The fact that it's something that I don't think they could make now, because it is such a hot button issue, like the institutionalized prison system, and everyone knows that
today's woke culture.
I mean, it's so dehumanizing and awful, and the movie gets into that. And even Stephen King, I think, is like famously liberal, so it'd be very clear, like he's wearing his politics on his sleeve with this one, and it's very clear. But when you're going into the movie, there's certain things that aren't dealt with ever. Like, Morgan Freeman is a black man in a prison that is predominantly white people, and there's no racism anywhere.
I'm gonna push back on this one. I actually think that I kind of I don't know. There's something about that aspect of the movie that, like, this is a movie made in the 90s about a friendship between a black man and a white man. And racism is not a part of the story. And it's like, well, there's something kind of fucking refreshing about it. Like, that you can just let that story be, like, that character's black, and I know historically, yeah, of course, they'd be racist. But, like, the idea that you can this character is a character people like, it's a well-developed character, he's black, and he's allowed to just be black, and that's not what his character is for. And also, yes, in the original novella, that character's white. There's a line in the movie.
Line. Yeah.
Yes, where he says, maybe it's because I'm Irish, when people ask him why he's called Red. Well, in the original book, he was Irish. And there was a kind of winking nod to that. I don't know. I think it's kind of refreshing in its own way that this... I don't know. I mean, this movie's about a lot of things. It's about the prison system. It's about all that. And I don't know. The idea that they can make a movie in the 90s where one of the main characters is black and one of them's white. Morgan Freeman's doing driving Miss Daisy his entire career. And he can just be a fucking character where his main device is not his race. Like, the point of his character is not his race.
I sympathize with that point of view, Zach. I do, but I think I kind of understand where Boris kind of coming from. By not acknowledging it, you are kind of whitewashing it a bit of prison life in the 1950s. Now,
well, it's one of those things where there's it's a no-win. Like, right, you can't there is no win. Like, somebody is going to complain about it being like, if it was all like, and now there's racism against Red, which we've added into the story because he wasn't black in the original. And people are like, well, now you have to change this because he's black. And it's like, you have to make it about his oppression. Or or you cast a white guy, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think casting anybody but Morgan Freeman would have worked as well in this movie. I want to be out and say that. I mean, he was nominated for an Oscar, didn't win, but he was nominated. And he has such a commanding presence, and you can't beat that voice. And so in a way, I'm kind of with both of you. I'm with you, Zach, because I think that it is kind of nice to have it where it's just going to be Morgan Freeman. Doesn't matter. Like, it's that I think putting it even as a B story. Plus, there's a lot going on in this movie, and throwing in a whole other C side to it, I think would struggle with an already pretty meaty movie.
So there's a couple aspects of this. Like, I think the movie has much more to do with the institutionalization aspect of prison, for instance. Like, some of those aspects are like the way like that part is much more deeply explored in the movie. Like I said, the entire Brooks segment is omitted in the book. It's maybe the strongest segment of it's one of the strongest segments in the movie, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And it's, I think, like, obviously, like, every movie you watch like is going to like it's partially a fable or a morality tale about like the perseverance of hope. Like it's not how many movies do you watch where it's like 100% this is not accurate to how the world would work like all of the time, and you're like, that's a flaw. Like never? Like, is there ever, like, do you want every movie to be fucking Gaspar Noé's Irreversible? Like, I don't know.
I don't. It's just
what you want. Like,
but not every movie is set in a prison. Like, that's the thing. It's like, for some reason, prisons to me are just such
like,
a...
the dialogue to be, you know, like, fucking, I'll tell you what, Schindler's List is set in a concentration camp, and a lot of that movie is fictionalized, like the way they talk and the lines, and like, I don't know that Schindler ever had a big speech about, if I had only given this ring, I could have done that or this. Like, that's a fucking movie, man. I don't know what to say.
I'm kind of with Zach on this one.
I gotcha. It just seemed odd to me because it was such a, you know, it's an intense topic.
Part of the struggles of the box office success of this movie was because it was a prison movie, and most people don't like to be reminded about prison. We in the right-sided society, we prefer not to think about it and go about our daily lives. So even if, yes, it is a tame unveiling of what is happening at an institutional level,
and I think for the time it was. For the time it was pretty grit. Like, I think for the time they were showing things that other prison movies didn't. Like, the entire Sisters storyline would. What's a movie before that had something like that? Or, you know, I mean, like
Midnight Express.
The solitary confinement seems pretty dark. Yeah. Like, there's stuff like that in Cool Hand Luke. But still.
I mean, it definitely pushes it forward. Like, you see an on-screen relationship, as you said, between two, like a white and a black man that's not dealt with as like it's a pleasant relationship that doesn't delve into the darkness of that.
No, and it deals more with like an age difference, really. That's I think the biggest, the dynamic between Andy and Red is the age difference and how long Red's been in there.
And it shows the cops as being bad. Like, all of them are bad. You see one or two that are like hello and polite, and it almost seems like they're in the wrong movie based off everything else you're saying, where it's like, that guy was just nice to Andy. I wouldn't have bought that. Or like, they like are polite when someone's leaving, and it's just like,
I think that there's another aspect. Like, there's a guard that's polite to Andy at a certain point. Andy gets this big windfall from the state, and he like has these records and books, right? This cop goes to the bathroom and is like, sort this shit out before I get back. But he's kind of happy for Andy. But like, at the same time, when Andy like plays the record, it's not like he's calling for, you know, amnesty
riots or anything.
Like, these people are still going to like side with the system. Like, even if they have an outward politeness, they're not going to like push against Warden Norton's prison labor shit. They're not going to push against Hadley shooting people in the yard. Like, they don't. They're going to eventually stick with what's theirs, even if they're outwardly slightly more polite than the guys who do the real bad shit.
It's the point that Chomsky always made about slave owners, you know, that like, I'm sure there were nice slave owners. I'm sure there were benevolent, nice slave owners. Doesn't change the fact that they weren't monsters, because the institution itself is monstrous. And that's what I think the prison life, what the theme of the movie is kind of hope springs eternal. That's kind of the overall theme of it. But I think a more interesting theme for me, especially this time watching around, because again, I've seen this movie 100 fucking times. It's because it was on TNT almost every day. And so like watching it this time, I got more of a kind of like a Cool Hand Luke vibe, you know, where Luke is rebelling against everything, you know, and Andy isn't necessarily doing that, but the record scene is important because it is his step in putting his feet on the ground and drawing a line, and even if he knows it's a small gesture just to have a glimpse of something else inside these walls is worth it for its own sake. So I think that's the overall theme, is that sometimes breaking out of the walls are worth it for its own sake, even if the walls seem impenetrable, even if you'll never be able to do it and it'll take you forever. Sometimes it's worth it for its own sake. And that's sort of the first hint of what's going on with Andy and what his overall plan was, is I think, and that's why I side with the consensus. I think this is probably the best Stephen King adaptation. Stephen King certainly thinks so. It's funny to me.
It's this. I mean, I think The Shining is my other big
I
possibility.
Like it. King doesn't like it, but fuck him.
I don't care. I don't really care what King thinks about the adaptations, but
that's true. But he even one of the things I wanted to talk about Darabont's kind of journey in adapting this story, because he acquired the rights to it in 1987. So I mean he was working on this for a while. And everybody, I mean, Stephen King straight up told him, like, oh, it's a great script. You'll never get anybody to buy it. It's not going to happen because it's a prison movie. And he said that, like, even the publisher didn't think, like, they want to adapt that? Why? Because, as Zach said, the story is not as cinematic as the movie is. It's not
and the novella, is less, is like, it's a rough read.
Right. It's as I understand, it's more bare bones. It's not really.
It is. There's a lot omitted. There's a lot of additional scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
There's good writing in the novella, and most of that good writing ends up in the script of the movie.
Sure, and that's why I mean he made it a choice to keep the voiceover, Red's narration, to keep the Stephen King prose. It's one of the things I learned, and I caught it on, especially this rewatch for the podcast. He was very much inspired by Scorsese's Goodfellas in his direction style, and boy, is that obvious. I mean, do this as a thought experiment next time you're watching this movie. Watch any scene of that movie and then just put, like, I don't know, Cream or The Who over it, or Howlin' Wolf or some blues over it. It will feel like a Scorsese movie. Just imagine in your head of, like, Smoke on the Water during the escape scene, and you'd be like, wow, this is a Scorsese film.
This is definitely, I mean, they have certainly the score for this movie is, like, still used in trailers to this day.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
Like,
and it's very minimal. There's not a lot of, it's not a very big thing. Newman's apparently Thomas Newman's first nomination.
The big scenes, the big emotional scenes do have a lot of, like, dramatic operatic camera swings, which I guess would be like a very
low dolly angles,
Yeah.
And I should say Deakins has shot this movie, and apparently Tim Robbins would only do the movie if Deakins shot it, because he just did the Hudsucker Proxy with the Coens. So we have Tim Robbins to thank for the great cinematography, although he did not get along well with Frank Darabont at all. He didn't want there to be anything outside. Deakins thought he wanted to be completely claustrophobic and not have any hint of daylight.
Weird.
That was Deakins' sort of vision.
Oh, so that was Deacon's vision to, like, keep it dark?
Deakins thought there was too many exterior scenes for it to be a prison movie. He wanted the walls to be a character, which he kind of did with Barton Fink. Anyway.
I mean, you get that later in Hunger, I guess, like, different filmmaker, but, you eventually see nothing but walls in a prison movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I want to say, circling back briefly to what I said about how I think it was very in vogue to dislike this movie for a time and, like, call it overrated. I think it's two causes. One, this movie sat happily on top of the IMDb 250 for a long time. I don't know if it's still there or if it's changed or not. I think that caused a lot of, like, people being like, it's not the best movie of all time. It's overrated. I understand, like, not thinking it's the best movie of all time. Like, that's an extremely difficult process. But I think the other thing was a little bit like, I have described this before, and actually Chris said it earlier in this episode. In some regards, this still feels like a 90s movie-ass movie to me. And it was the same year that, like, Pulp Fiction came out and was trying to, like, push that. And I think a lot of people, like, ran with that ball for the next, until now, I guess. Like, people really like making things, maybe more.
Forrest Gump also came out too, and that's another movie-ass movie.
That's more movie-ass movie than this, actually. Yeah, this is like, between the two, in my opinion.
I
I think that's also part of why I feel like there is an aspect of this movie that feels too traditional and standard, at least, especially from a modern perspective. And you contrast that with Pulp Fiction, like kind of making, I think it's like in terms of how people made movies, I think Pulp Fiction is a big deal. And that came out the same year as this. People are like, well, it's just more old guard traditionalist shit.
Spielberg.
And
yeah,
exactly.
I think
I
would
think
agree.
people are like, moving back on that a little bit now. And also eventually with time, most of the time when something huge gets a backlash for a while, after a certain amount of years, people are like, actually, it's just good. Like there's a time where it's cool to have that backlash. Like The Dark Knight, I feel like for a long time people were like overrated, and now I feel like people are starting to be like, actually, it's just pretty good.
I always thought it was pretty good, but I agree with that. I've always been against the movie Crash because when it came out, everyone said it was fantastic. I'm waiting
you have the
for
opposite
everyone.
Reaction, right?
I'm waiting for everyone to catch up with me on that one. Anyway,
everyone thinks Crash is shit now.
Do they?
Are you kidding? Everybody's like, it's the worst Oscar winner. People fucking hate that movie. I never see anyone defend.
I feel better now. Because I felt like
I feel validated.
I feel validated.
Hate that movie.
I feel seen.
I'm sorry, you've been out of the loop.
Okay.
That movie has not been liked for years. Like people are like, this is the worst.
I feel better.
Winner.
You know what? You had your Crash episode of the Film Concussion over 10 years ago, Borif. You were the pioneer, buddy. So you could pat yourself on the back.
I'm gonna give Zach a point for letting me know I'm not alone.
Look at us, huh?
Oh,
We've missed giving points clearly. I also kind of wanted to talk about the reveal edits of the climax. Where it kind of goes back in time and pieces together for you. I thought that was handled quite well. I usually kind of think it's a little bit of a cheat to kind of like, oh, well, here's all the shit you missed. But I thought it was handled pretty immaculately. I thought that the reveal and the way it concluded, where it goes back to him ripping out the poster and there's that long dolly out from the hole. I think that was done really, really well. Because I think Borif, I never thought of this movie as a whodunit, but I think that's well said, because it kind of is. When you realize once he's gone, you're like, wait, what? And it kind of says, see, he's, apparently like Robbins would like intentionally like rub his eyes to make it look like he hasn't been sleeping. And I also think, because one of the criticisms that came out about this movie when it was released was Tim Robbins, and how Tim Robbins is more or less just kind of aloof and just kind of letting things happen to him. I think Borf kind of mentioned he's more of a reactionary kind of character, but I think that's intentional. I think that serves its purpose, because if we're too close to Andy, we start to lift the rock and understand what's happening here. I think the way it does it, you still like Andy, but you're not as you're more fascinated with him. You're puzzled by him. You're not like him as a person necessarily. You're more, what's this guy about? Yeah. And I think when that reveal happens in that editing sequence, I thought it was pretty well done. Even though when you see it other times, it kind of looks like, I think it's kind of a cheat. But this one does it immaculately.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that in this one, it's because it's earned. Like you're sitting with a character for the whole movie that he's a trickster hero. Not to use that, I think, for the third or fourth time in this podcast. But the thing is that every time he gets into a bind, he usually uses some sort of, by hook or by crook, mind game to get out of it.
Buddy.
Yeah. So, like, by the time it gets there, he's not there to tell you how he did it, so you have to see it visually. And I agree, it's wonderful to have the how he got away with it done in a totally visual manner. That's very bold and in your face and movie storytelling for that chunk, just because you're not going to have Tim Robbins there, and it's not like Morgan Freeman knows any of this stuff. You just got to see it.
But and I guess, my perception of like the weirdness. To go back briefly to like Andy as a protagonist, he falls into a very strange, like if he is the central character, like there's a strange class of protagonists that you see semi rarely, which is obviously usually an individual character who's the central figure of the story needs to grow and change. And then occasionally you have this kind of character who is the main character of a story and their purpose is to make the world around them more like them. This is like Paddington or Superman or Captain America is really this in a lot of instances. And there's other examples that are less like, hyperbolic or cartoonish, but like that's how Andy reads to me more so than anything. So
yeah. No, and it's unusual, and it's particularly useful in prison movies because one of my favorite,
Luke would be that, yeah.
Cool Hand Luke a little bit, but you're still kind of charmed by Luke, and you have an emotional connection to Luke because you deal with the whole thing with his mom.
You can have an emotional connection to those movies. Fucking Paddington 2 is a prison movie.
Oh, yes, very true. But like, what I'm saying is that Andy's different in as you're talking about. He's in a strange class of protagonists because the movie goes out of its way to make him this shroud of mystery around him. And your goal is not necessarily you as an audience member are not necessarily watching him grow. You're watching him unveil what's actually happening around you, and that's where he kind of falls in. And Luke does a little bit, but again, you're with Luke most of the time, and there's your drag line a little bit, but not really like Red. And then one of my other favorite prison movies, I think is vastly underrated, is the original Papillon with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. That's kind of a similar vibe, except it's very clear that Steve McQueen's the main character and Dustin Hoffman is the side character. But it has that kind of similar dynamic where you have this guy who's looking to bust out. And then, another Steve McQueen famous prison break movie, Great Escape, there's like 10 protagonists in that damn movie. Like whole bunches of them. So I think you're absolutely right that this is a unique protagonist because of how at arm's length he is throughout the whole movie to the audience. So yeah, I in a way I kind of agree. I mean, Paddington. You still just because he's adorable, and you just want to keep him. Like that's you don't get that with Andy Dufresne. There is no like, oh, I want to be his buddy. You want to be
right.
Morgan Freeman's buddy. You don't
but
really.
The point of like Paddington as a character is wherever he goes, his presence and who he is improves the place that he is in. He's no matter how dark it is.
Yeah, he's a little fuzzy Jesus. He's just walking around,
that's great.
making people feel better. Yeah.
Great movies. All right, well, I guess that kind of puts us into final thoughts.
Sure.
Unless anybody else has anything to say. I think I'll go first because I've got the shortest amount to say, I promise. Because really, again, what can be said? I mean, whether or not this movie is on your top 10 list, it's hard to deny it's not a masterpiece. Hard to deny the quality of this film. Even, again, if it's not one of your favorites, it's hard to say really a bad thing about it because it just hits every note pretty dead on. And even as the many times that it has been exposed to me, you still, you walk away from that movie feeling pretty satisfied. I watched this when I was very, very ill. And it reminded me of one of those movies that you watch when you're really, really sick. You're just like, oh, this is on. Okay, I'll watch this. This will get me through the day. And if I fall asleep, I've seen it 100 times. Who cares? That's a statement to unvarnished sort of potential, because this is one of Darabont's first fucking movies. Hasn't done much after, he's not the prolific filmmaker of certainly of any of his contemporaries. I think the most significant cultural thing he's done in recent days was produce the first season of Walking Dead. I think he mainly just keeps his trade as a screenwriter nowadays, as his IMDb credits show. And I kind of get it. How do you top this movie? How do you tried with Green Mile, and Green Mile is very good, but it's no Shawshank, and we all know it. So yeah, it's. I've never met anybody who said a bad word about it. I didn't know that there was this kind of like snobbery going around to its fashionable hate, but it's always true with successful movies that
it's declined, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even Spielberg kind of it's still kind of fashionable to kind of say, you know, Spielberg's passé or whatever. Even though I think that opinion's not right. So yeah, and certainly of the prison movie genre, this is in the top 5. I mean, easy top 5 with a bullet. There's very few movies that touch this movie as far as prison movies go. The realistic aspect, more if I could give 2 fucks about, really. I really don't give a shit. If I wanted to watch realistic, I'd watch Hunger and want to kill myself by the end of it. Because that's a brutal movie. So it's a feel-good movie. Even though it's so kind of dark and brutal, it's a feel-good movie. And it's hard to make feel-good movies good. And I think considering the box office failure and subsequent now cultural almost staple of American film, I mean, so much so it's in the Library of Congress, says something about not just about audiences seeing movies that are quality, but also about how, with a little patience, movies can develop a life of their own, and audiences will find it. If the product is quality, the audience will find it. And I think Shawshank's excellent example of, I mean, A Wonderful Life. It's the same deal. Citizen Kane didn't do well in the box office either. So like it's very, very common that audiences don't know shit. That's my final thoughts.
2 was a little bit of an underwhelming box office performance as well, and now people are really loving that movie.
And there's going to be a third one. I'm so happy that it's coming along. My final thoughts on this one, it is a classic. I'm not going to say anything bad about it, really. Very much a 90s film. This is something that you can watch with family. And that's a lot to say for something that does involve the prison system and people being incarcerated and police officers not being shown to be great. So this was able to at least open up the conversation with a lot of like more Republican family members to consider that maybe the prison system is unnecessarily dehumanizing to people. And I would suggest this is definitely a fine movie to still watch. I don't see any reason not to want to go into it.
I was a young person first getting into movies, like a young teenager. There was a period of time where I was like, oh yeah, this is actually maybe the best movie ever made. And I don't have that opinion now. Like, it's not in my top 10. I think, like, there are films that tackle things more interesting and have more interesting ideas overall to express, as much as I think there's a lot of there is like some unconventional aspects to the way this movie is set up plot wise. I think, it feels like an Oscar movie in a big way. And movies that feel that way, it's like a thing that is like almost such a well-worn shoe that anyone with enough of a budget can put it on with ease. And it's, it doesn't feel as individually as distinctive as a lot of movies can. And it doesn't necessarily, while I think there are things that it introduced to people's minds. I wonder how much institutionalization is known to people as a concept because of this movie. And honestly, that might be the most impacting, that part works as a short film about this poor man. That's the saddest part of the movie for me. That's the part that still gets me when I watch it. It's hard to deny that it's not superbly well done in that cast of film, that it holds up, that when you watch it, it gets your attention, that it holds your attention. It does what it does very well. That's, a lot of times about the best you could ask for from a movie. So even though it's not my absolute favorite as it was when I was first like kind of discovering the language of film and then evolving my own sort of tastes as a young person. It's a good, I think it's a good early stepping stone before you dig into more complex stuff. And I think it holds up even, like a childhood favorite, it holds up even to this day. Or a teenage favorite.
I saw this movie when my parents rented it when I was 10 years old, and there was a lot I did not understand. But the scene where Boggs gets his ass kicked, that scene always stuck with me. I don't know why, but it was kind of, it didn't terrify me because I knew he was like a bad guy, but because of how brutal it was, it was kind of like, it was before I saw a Coen brother movie. So like it kind of jarred me a little bit of how.
I'll tell you this. We talked about The Green Mile today. The hardest I think maybe I ever cried as a kid at a movie. My parents rented The Green Mile when it was new and watched it with me. And the scene where the guy is electrocuted without the water, and who's like the guy who has the mouse, who's like a nice dude. That made me absolutely break down.
That is the stuff that feels more emotionally truthful for me, even though it's kind of goofy and made up.
Somebody has to be brutally murdered and tortured in order to
the
get
part of the movie.
It's not even that Andy gets away all the time, Chris. They clearly, like, the narration is like he didn't always escape, and you're like,
I know
he escaped too many times for me.
Well, I mean, the thing is that in the movie, my favorite part, I agree, is the part with the old man. Like, it's the part that seems the most emotionally honest about the fact that this is, like, a horrendously destructive circumstance. I mean, I'm just not, I'm not a rainbows guy. I can't believe in rainbows. Right. I have to imagine something terrible happening before I can take a movie seriously. I don't know why.
Before we get off it, because we've talked about it a lot.
So many terrible things happen in this movie.
Right. Yeah. What I will say, I think more importantly about that scene with Brooks in the middle, is the way almost shot for shot it's identical to Red's journey at the end when he's trying to acclimate.
Very well.
That sets up a sense of danger for the audience, that like Red's actually in mortal peril by doing this. So I think that's a brilliant take. So I think it's very well done, and good movie. Gonna be hard to beat, Zach, not gonna lie. This is a little bit of me putting the Wild Bunch for Peckinpah. You set the bar pretty fucking high. So it's gonna be tough to pick. So hopefully Borov can land on his face.
There's a lot of good movies based on books.
I know.
The only requirement is you have to have read the book.
This is the challenge. You're thinking that I'm not subliterate. That's the problem. Because I was tempted to just go, I'm going to say Passion of the Christ. Screw it.
Oh, God.
And here's the deal. I've never read the Bible. I don't care to read the Bible. I'm not going to do it for the bit. Starship Troopers. That's another one I could have picked. I read the book Starship Troopers. I hated the book Starship Troopers with a passion.
Yeah, because it's fucking fascist, and the Verhoeven movie's a satire of it.
Yes. And so that was obviously up there as an option, but it's like...
the movie's way better.
It's way better, and it's not even close to being like the original novel anyway.
But it would be an interesting conversation.
It would. All Quiet on the Western Front. That one came out. I remember being passionate about that one.
Oscars, too.
Sure. I also remembered that I've only read it back in 99, so I would not remember any of that book. Same thing with Stalker, which I read recently, which was fantastic. The Roadside Picnic book. None of those are going to be my pick. So I decided that what I was going to do had to be, I might not win, but I'm going to come in for the fight, guys.
All right, let's go.
During pandemic, when it got really grim, I read Pontypool again.
Oh, jeez, here we go.
Pontypool, the book by Tony Burgess. We did this one other time, way back in the day on the podcast.
Yep.
Were we all in that at that point?
Yeah, we were all in there.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I hadn't read the book at that time. I have read the book now, like multiple times. I got some opinions, so I can actually bring it up, and that's what I'm going to suggest. Pontypool, based off the book Pontypool Changes Everything by Tony Burgess. That's what I'm going to suggest for next week.
Not Anthony Burgess, right? Who wrote Clockwork
No.
Orange?
No.
Burgess?
No.
Much later.
Okay.
This guy's name is Anthony Burgess, but it's a different Anthony. This guy's from...
okay. All right.
This is a Canadian Anthony, not a English
Okay. Well,
Anthony.
they
English,
still
yes.
they still love the Queen. So, all right. All right. Well, we'll revisit Pontypool. It has been since the podcast since I've seen that movie, and I know how much you love it, and it is a pretty good movie. So I'm excited to watch it. Okay. What year did that come out, Borf? What was
Just
2000?
to recall,
2005, I believe.
to give
2006.
everybody a frame of reference for our last film concussion episode about this, it was the maddest Russell ever was about the pairing. And it was Pontypool and Lawrence of Arabia.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I remember that.
Yeah. Don't worry, because I think since Borif picked this one, my pick will be also kind of revisiting the film Concussion Days. Stay tuned. Okay, well, before we let you go and to sign off, let's get a quick rundown of the points, because we were generous this time. We missed giving out points, guys, and we came in with full effect. So, Chris Borif, you got a point from me about, not... Andy's kind of not being a good guy is kind of his character change. I kind of like that point. And you got a point from Zach, which eludes me at the moment. I can't remember why Zach gave me a
He
point.
learned to pronounce.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Because he finally got the location in
Zawatenejo.
Mexico right. See, you notice I don't even bother. I just say the place in Mexico. I cheat. Okay, and I got a point from Borif for calling the Green Mile the spiritual successor of the Shawshank Redemption. And Zach got a point from Chris Borif for, again, that eludes me. I don't know what did you give him a point for?
Zadawanejo.
Remember?
Zanejo.
No, why did you give Zach a point? You gave Zach a point for something, and I can't remember what it was. But anyway,
I said something smart.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
he just did something smart and amazing.
Funny.
That's Zach. That's Zach's bread and butter. Smart and amazing.
There
That's
you
what
go.
he does.
Okay, so that puts Chris Borif. You have one more bonus point to give out with 12 points for final voting.
Okay.
I have two bonus points to give out for 11 points for final voting, and Zach Powers has 2 points for 11 points for final voting. And that's what will send us for next time, where we watch Chris Borif's pick 2005's Pontypool on our films that based off of adaptations that ourselves have read. So with that in mind, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. If you're still mad at us about RRR, very sorry. If you haven't guessed, we're just a couple of guys. But thanks for watching. We appreciate it, and hopefully this movie has reinforced the idea that we're a bunch of knuckleheads. So with that in mind, I have been Russell Carlson, and I have been joined by Chris Borif.
Get busy living or get busy dying.
Indeed. And I have been joined by Zach Powers.
Clancy Brown yelling. We didn't talk about Clancy Brown. He's Lex
true,
Luthor.
man. Clancy
He's
Brown
great.
is awesome, and Clancy Brown rules. In Carnival, a short-lived series on HBO, he was awesome in it. Great bad guy. Very tall man with an imposing voice. Love Clancy Brown. Big fan. Okay, so, as we always say here on The Movie Trap, Diane Ladd is too young to play Chevy Chase's mom. It's the Movie Trap promise.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Red, I do believe you're talking out of your ass.
You believe whatever you want, Floyd. But I'm telling you, these walls are funny. First you hate them, then you get used to them. Enough time passes, you get so you depend on them. That's institutionalized. They send you here for life. That's exactly what they take. Part that counts, anyway.